ArenaNet has announced the next expansion for Guild Wars 2, Visions of Eternity. This comes with a lot of excitement. They have already confirmed new elite specs, new maps, new raid encounters, new legendary gear, and much more. All of this taking place on Castor, a brand new region of the game world we have never been to before. Although what has been teased and revealed so far is that the Inquest has been there. The Inquest will be playing a much larger role in the expansion than what we have seen from them so far.
So in this video, I thought it would be interesting to dive a little deeper into the lore about the Inquest, so we can learn more about them and be prepared for what we might encounter in this new expansion. I have covered the Inquest before, but that was in my old super condensed format. This time, I think it's important to be a bit more detailed, so that way we can speculate what it is they might be up to over on that mysterious island. Now, as we discuss things, I will try to make comparisons to the rest of Asura society. That way we can understand a lot more the specific areas that the Inquest is different from the average Asura. So let's turn our attention over to the Inquest, or the Asuran Inquisition if you prefer to use their full name. I bet you didn't expect that. The Inquest is often seen as the villain faction of the Asura, and it's easy to see why. The game's story writing definitely paints them that way, and for the most part they do play the role. They get into a lot of mischief, stealing, sabotage, plagiarism. The Inquest are very often on the wrong side of the law, or so it would seem. They have expanded all across Tyria to the point where they might be the most widespread organization that the Asura have. This is partly due to their structure. While the rest of the Asura are split into crews that are affiliated with colleges, which are usually kept small for efficiency's sake, the Inquest is structured as one massive mega crew. Technically, every Inquest member is part of the same crew. They seem to operate in a hierarchy-style leadership, with many underlings serving a boss. Although the actual leadership of the Inquest is unknown, it's unclear if they're led by an individual or by a council. Many times when we have encountered a high-ranking Inquest member, it isn't revealed exactly how high-ranking they actually are. The full detailed structure of the Inquest is classified knowledge. The mega crew structure clearly has its benefits since the Inquest has become one of the largest organizations, but it also allows for their knowledge and research to be protected and maintained by a mass number of people. In fact, that was one of the original reasons for the Inquest founding. Back when Primordus invaded the old Asura capital of Kuara Sum, the invasion led to a lot of knowledge being lost. So the old Inquest founders created a group that would be structured in such a way to prevent a loss of knowledge similar to that in the future. Today, the Inquest have been involved in some very impressive and impactful inventions and massive research stations, such as Rata Primus, Rata Arcanum, the Crucible of Eternity, and the Thumanova reactor. The size of the Inquest even rivals that of the Asuran colleges. In fact, there isn't really any way to know for sure how many members the Inquest actually has. I doubt they would even share that information. Many of their members seem to display a cult-like devotion to the Inquest, and I think there are a few reasons why this may be. To understand that, we need to discuss the Inquest's outlook on knowledge and invention.
The Inquest treat knowledge as their property. Anything you invent, discover, or even learn about while with them, that knowledge now belongs to them. Most Asura are protective of their research, however they still allow for others to use or learn about it on occasion, especially in the context of collaboration. But the Inquest do not allow this at all. Everything they discover, create, or learn is secret, classified information that they treat as their own property. They will even go as far as to sabotage work by non-Inquest if they think it is too similar to their own. Because of all this, leaving the Inquest is difficult. Generally speaking, you can't leave. Once you join, you are in for life. If you were to try and leave, you would be leaving with knowledge that belongs to them, which they will not allow. They will threaten potential leavers with death. Any escapees will often have a hit squad sent to hunt them down. It is said that if one can successfully leave the Inquest, they will spend the rest of their life watching their back in fear. I think this sort of threat or bully culture sometimes brainwashes members into thinking that there is no life for them outside of the Inquest. So perhaps they develop this mindset that the Inquest is an integral part of their own identity. Or maybe it's as simple as they don't want to put themselves or their loved ones in danger if they were to attempt leaving the Inquest. I also think that many members that are interested in unethical research for whatever reason find that they are more suited for the Inquest, since the Inquest doesn't have any problem with that sort of thing.
The Usura do have a reputation for being a bit difficult to get along with. This obsession with intelligence and inventing often leads to conducting experiments which can be seen as problematic, especially by other races who don't agree with their methods or just don't understand the purpose of their research. Now, of course, not all Asura are like this, but of the ones that are, you often find them in the Inquest. The Inquest are perhaps the worst offenders when it comes to unethical practices or just downright dangerous and irresponsible work. Let's take a little bit of time now and highlight some of these terrible offenders.
Teo, who has a long track record of tampering with the research belonging to the colleges or just stealing research. She used to work with Scarlet Briar. The two of them even broke into the Radasum archives to tamper with the research stored there. Teo also invented the Griswhirl, which is a device that would be used by human separatists in an assassination plot against Queen Jenna. Kudu, who might be the worst of them all. He used to be an apprentice of Snaff, but eventually became obsessed with dragon energy. He is the head of research at the Crucible of Eternity, where he conducts most of his work. He experiments on dragon minions and extracts their energy in an attempt to create his own army of dragon minions. He would even go as far as to test dragon energy on himself to gain ultimate power. I actually think he's a really good villain. He's so arrogant and evil. Everything he does makes you hate him. If you haven't played through the Sorrow's Embrace or Crucible of Eternity dungeon story, I would recommend it so you can see how his whole story plays out. Anyways, another offender is Overseer Kuda, who conducted similar research to Kudu in Rata Primus. She has succeeded in creating dragon champions and tests them on unsuspecting victims who walk through the research complex. Counselor Yak, who helps mobilize the Inquest all across the Asura territory, technically making him complicit in everything they do. There are also just some terrible disasters that have been caused by the Inquest and their research, such as the Thumanova reactor explosion, which leaked chaos magic fallout all over the land. The degradation of Rata Primus that led to awakened minions overrunning parts of the facility. The time they experimented on newborn Sylvari, causing them extreme pain and disfigurement, which is something they did more than once. Or when they lost control of their Scarab Plague research that led to lots of Inquest members dying and becoming awakened minions. There has been many times the Inquest has been caught kidnapping people to use as test subjects in research that will ultimately kill the subject.
Okay, so I think you get the point. The Inquest don't really care for ethics or health and safety of any kind. All that matters to them is furthering their research to accomplish whatever goals it is they have set out for themselves. But why is that? Why do they have this mentality? And more importantly, why does the rest of Asura society seem to put up with it? Why do they allow it to happen? This is a little bit complicated, but there are some reasons that I can think of. Let's start with the Inquest mentality. Why do they behave this way? What causes them to focus on such dangerous topics and pursue them no matter the costs? It has something to do with the main reason all Asura conduct research: the Eternal Alchemy.
The Eternal Alchemy is an ideology that teaches the Asura that all things are connected by some kind of greater purpose. Whether it is physical, magical, spiritual, if it exists, it is part of the Eternal Alchemy. Often a lot of research that is done by the Asura is to further their understanding of the Eternal Alchemy, sometimes trying to learn the place something has within the alchemy. Some Asura consider the alchemy to be a philosophical ideology, while others think it to be a scientific principle. I suppose that depends on who you ask and what their own interpretation of it is. Once the Eternal Alchemy is properly understood, the Asura will be able to further their knowledge about anything and gain mastery over it. However, the Inquest believe that the Eternal Alchemy itself can be mastered and controlled, maybe even manipulated to fit their needs. They think that after achieving their goal of gaining full control over the alchemy, they will be able to dominate all things in existence. This could explain why they are so hell-bent on pushing research research to its limits, focusing on dangerous topics. If they can fully control something so dangerous and powerful, who could ever stand against them? It could also explain why most Inquest members have a self-centered attitude, not really caring about other members, focusing on their own progress.
Now let's turn our attention to the question, why are they seemingly allowed to behave this way? There doesn't seem to be much resistance against them from the rest of Asura society, other than the general feeling of disdain towards them or the strong disagreement with their methods. There isn't any kind of active action taken against them. An anti-Inquest campaign doesn't seem to exist, and they generally go unpunished and get away with everything. How can that be? In all of my lore reading, I have come up with what I think might be the answer to that. You see, all Asura fall under the watch of the Arcane Council, which is the governing body, so to speak. The council oversees all Asura activities, research projects, experiments, teaching, training, even threats to their land. They are also responsible for placing laws and regulations that all Asura must abide by. They are made up of the dean of each college and a few other high-ranking members in Asura society. The council, however, seems to be a bit biased in favor of the Inquest. Since the Inquest is willing to do anything and everything, the council will often use them to handle any difficult problems, especially those problems that might cause a bit of a scandal if the Arcane Council was involved. They'll use the Inquest instead to keep a clean reputation. Now, that's not to say that they will only use the Inquest. They will use other Asura if they prove to be more cost-effective or efficient, but that's not always the case. But it goes even further than this. The Inquest have a high-ranking member seated on the council.
Counselor Yak is a known Inquest member. He will tell you himself, and the council openly accepts him and the Inquest. It seems as though Counselor Yak offers the Inquest services to the rest of the council if they are in need of help, and in return the council seems to leave the Inquest to themselves and allows them to act beyond the laws set out for the rest of the Asura, even going as far as defending the Inquest from any criminal accusations. You can actually see this happen for yourself in one of the first story missions of the Asura personal story. When the Inquest sabotage your crew's golem, the counselors just dismiss your accusation even though the evidence is right there in front of them. It's a real scandalous affair up there in the council chamber, but I think that answers why the Inquest seems to get away with what they do without any type of major punishment from the governing body.
Now, there is one thing I want to circle back around to, and that's the Inquest leadership. At the beginning, you may recall I said it's unclear if the Inquest is led by an individual or a council of their own, and throughout this video I've mentioned a few names. It is unknown if Kudu or Counselor Yak were the Inquest leader or Inquest counselors if an Inquest council exists. The same is true for Teo and Kuda or any named Inquest member that we've encountered. We have no way of knowing where exactly they fit into the Inquest structure. For example, Kudu was the leader of a lot of research taking place in Sorrow's Embrace and Crucible of Eternity, but he doesn't seem to have anything to do with things that are happening outside of those areas. And even after Kudu's defeat, the Inquest operations still continue as normal with no interruptions, which would imply that somebody else must be in charge elsewhere. At Rata Primus, there is mention of a director of operations, however this director goes unnamed. All the information about them has been redacted, but it does at least prove that Rata Primus was under the control of a separate person. In the case of Counselor Yak, it's unclear if he is an Inquest leader or just their chosen representative on the Arcane Council. Even when talking to him, his speech about his relation to the Inquest is a bit confusing. My understanding is that he simply acts as a liaison between the Council and the Inquest, but that would imply that he has superiors within the Inquest that he reports to.
Personally, my theory is that the Inquest is likely run by a council of the highest ranking members. I just think that the organization is so massive that it would be illogical for one single person to be overseeing everything all at once, especially when there are multiple operations happening at the same time focusing on different things. But that's just my personal speculation based on what we know about them at the time of recording this.
All of this is just to reinforce that the Inquest is shrouded in mystery. We really don't know know for sure how high up it goes or how far their reach spreads. Speaking of which, it clearly spreads far out to the new island of Castora.
We know that Castora is an area ripe with ley energy and mysterious ancient magic. The Inquest and their obsession to control and manipulate such things clearly are intrigued by it. The voice in the expansion trailer sounds like an Asura voice, and using the context of the visuals, I think we can assume it is an Inquest member talking about the potential of the Castora magic. They make mention of finding the future through exceptional vision. That could just be a figure of speech about how they will drive themselves forward, but let's assume it's not. We know the Inquest see themselves as greater than others. They think it is their right to control the eternal alchemy and dominate all others. So what if they plan to use this magic on Castora as a way to force others into submission? We can see in the trailer that this one Asura has already managed to do so with some of the local wildlife. But that also begs another question. Who is this Asura? Could this be the long-awaited Inquest leader, or maybe just another senior member? Then the trailer ends with a question. What would you sacrifice for power? In the case of the Inquest, the answer is likely everything. Most of them have no boundaries when the result is gaining power. But the word sacrifice is interesting. But all things considered, I really don't know what the Inquest could have planned. I suppose this feeling of uncertainty about what we're about to encounter does match the Inquest quite well.
So I think that'll put a wrap on this video. But I do want to pose some questions to you. What do you think of the Inquest? Do you have any theories about them? And what is your take on what they could be doing over on Castora? Now that we all have a much better understanding about them, I'd be curious to hear any speculations. Well, if you are still here and you made it all the way through to the end, thank you. This video did have a bit of a combination between known lore and speculation using context found within the game to fill in the blanks, which personally I felt was a fun way to present things. Anyways, that's going to be all for this one. Thank you very much for watching, and goodbye for now.